Hello and welcome to Unacademy. On behalf of Unacademy, I wish you a happy new year. May this year all your legitimate dreams come true. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing. Let's look at topic number 1 on page number 1 of today's Delhi edition of The Hindu newspaper. Vodafone-Idea gets relief on AGR dues. Let's understand this topic in great detail. There are telecom companies. They are required to pay license fee, spectrum charges to the government, to the union government, in the form of what we call a revenue share. So the amount of revenue that they generate, a part of it they will have to share with the central government in the form of license fee, in the form of spectrum charges. For example, 5G spectrum, 4G spectrum, so on and so forth. But how does the central government calculate this revenue share that they have to take from these telecom companies? That is what we call AGR, adjusted gross revenue. But how do we calculate this adjusted gross revenue? Listen to me carefully. There are telecom companies which earn revenue. How? By selling prepaid plans, postpaid plans, broadband plans, fixed landline plans, and other services. This is what we call core telecom services. But there are also telecom companies which may earn revenue from other sources, which are not core telecom sources. For example, there is some amount of money which a telecom company may keep with the bank in the form of fixed deposits and then earn revenue, interest from these fixed deposits. That is also revenue. Can this revenue also determine the amount of revenue share that you have to give to the central government? Number one. Number two, there are telecom companies which may have real estate assets and they may lease these assets to you, and from you they will generate rent, which will also be revenue. Long story short, telecom companies, they generate revenue from core telecom sources, from other non-core telecom sources as well. The government of India says, the central government says, the entire revenue will be determining the AGR. The entire revenue will have to be included to determine your AGR, and as such to determine how much you will pay to the central government in the form of license fee and spectrum charges. Telecom companies say, no, only include that revenue which we generate from core telecom services. This was the tussle between the union government, the central government, and telecom companies. And long story short, matter went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said the definition provided by Department of Telecommunication, that definition is correct. Which means the amount of revenue generated by these telecom companies, whether from core telecom operations or non-core telecom operations, together will decide your AGR and your license fee and spectrum charges to the government. Reliance Jio was a new entrant into the telecom market, and they were able to pay it because they had less liability. Vodafone had a massive liability. And if this liability was more, the services or the revenue generating model of Vodafone-Idea was also shortened, in a sense that they were not able to generate more revenue from their subscribers. They hardly have 20 million subscribers. And this is where there was a massive burden of these AGR charges of Vodafone-Idea. On top of that, they had to pay interests as well. Interest amount on what you owe to the government. This was a massive amount, and finally the central government came to the rescue of Vodafone. In February 2023, the central government said, if you owe us this amount of money, we will pardon you that money, we will forego that money, but instead we will acquire share or stake in your Vodafone-Idea company. Which means if you were owing 16,133 crore of interest because of your liability to pay AGR, we will convert that liability into equity share of 33%, almost 33%. And then in 2025, early 2025, last year, the government decided to further increase its share in Vodafone-Idea, and right now the share of the union government in Vodafone-Idea is roughly 49%. What am I trying to say? The year was 1991. And because of 1991 economic reforms, what happened because of these economic reforms? Liberalization, privatization, globalization. The government also made a promise, and that promise was no further nationalization, because we saw how prior to 1991 the governments would resort to nationalization, which means banks, private banks will be converted into public sector banks. Airlines may be converted into nationalized airlines. This would dampen the spirit of private investment in India. And if we want to open up our economy, if we want to give investors a sentiment that they should and they can invest in India, for that we have made a policy. The government decided no further nationalization. We will not convert private entities and nationalize them. So isn't this nationalization? Where the government is saying that since you owe us the money, we will not take that money in the form of interest payments. So whatever interest payments you had to give us, we will forego that amount. Instead, we will convert that amount into equity. And now our stake in Vodafone-Idea, which is a private entity, will be roughly 49%. Isn't this nationalization or quasi-nationalization, which you said in 1991 that we will not resort to? No. Why? There is a difference. If this industry or a company was nationalized, that means day-to-day operations will be managed by the government. Despite the fact that central government has 49% stake in Vodafone-Idea, the government does not run this entity. It is still run by its promoters, Aditya Birla Group, Vodafone. That's the difference. So it is not nationalization. The government says we are doing this to ensure that there is no duopoly in the telecom sector. Right now we have Bharti Airtel and Reliance Jio. These are the two dominant telecom players. We need a third telecom player if we sideline the state-run BSNL, MTNL. We need a third private telecom player, because for that, then what happens? There is competitiveness in the market. There's a choice available with the citizens of this country. So when there is more competition, the advantageous position is for the customer, which is the people of this country. So the government says, we want to ensure that these crores and crores of subscribers of Vodafone-Idea, their interests are also safeguarded. We want to ensure duopoly in the system, because we don't want to see the repeat of what is happening in airline industry, where there is one dominant airline, Indigo, and we saw what crisis Indigo went into in the recent past. But at the same time, Bharti Airtel, which also has to pay thousands of crores in the form of AGR revenue, it is also asking the central government that please give us this benefit as well, which you are trying to give to Vodafone-Idea. But right now, this benefit is only for Vodafone-Idea. But Vodafone-Idea, despite the fact that government converted interest dues into equity, they still had to pay thousands of crores of rupees in the form of AGR. Now they approached the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court asked the central government, please consider this AGR of the Vodafone-Idea, which they owe to you. And the government has now said, whatever you had to owe us, we are going to postpone it. You still will have to pay it, but we will postpone it. You will have to give it to us from 2031 onwards till 2041. So the amount of money that you had to pay now in the next few years, we are going to postpone it. Now you have to pay us from 2031 onwards in installments till 2041, which means it's a big relief for Vodafone-Idea. Because if they had to pay this money now, they would not have been in a position to pay it, and Vodafone-Idea would have become bankrupt. If Vodafone-Idea becomes bankrupt, that means now we have duopoly in the telecom market, two dominant players, Airtel and the Reliance Jio. So this is a win-win situation for customers, and government also gets to win. Why? Because they have already foregone interest payments. They have 49% stake in Vodafone-Idea. If this company goes bankrupt, the value of these equity shares would be less or close to nil. But if we give breathing space to Vodafone-Idea over a period of time, maybe because of their operations, because of their revenue generating capabilities, they will be able to sustain their operations, become profitable as well, generate revenue as well. So this 49% stake that the central government has will have some value. And ultimate beneficiary are the people of this country, because it is basically our money that the government has invested in Vodafone-Idea. But it also raises an important question, and that is why there is a mains-based question on your screen. The government's acquisition of a majority stake in debt-ridden private entities is often termed accidental nationalization. So this was an accident to convert the interest payments that Vodafone-Idea owed to the central government in the form of equity shares. But critically analyze the rationale behind this government's equity conversion in telecom sector. Does this approach align with the principles of competitive market economy and fiscal prudence? What if the Vodafone-Idea even then collapses? The value, that 49% stake that the central government has in this entity, would be nil. And shouldn't a private sector and a space in the private sector be determined by the market hands? If a private entity has to collapse, let it collapse. That's one side of the argument. Because the government should not be in a position to help debt-ridden companies. For that logic, the government could have absorbed these crores of subscribers of Vodafone-Idea into state-run BSNL and MTNL. That's what the critics argue. So we have one argument, we have another argument. Maybe the government is right. We need to ensure that there is no duopoly in the telecom sector with two dominant private players. We need a third dominant private player as well, which will give more choice to the customers, and the winner is the people of this country. And before we continue further, as a gift, a New Year gift to our subscribers, Unacademy has reduced its subscription fee to its lowest ever, 17,999. And if you are unable to crack this examination in the first attempt, your second attempt's entire preparation will be borne by Unacademy. If you want to subscribe to our courses now and kickstart your CSE 2027 journey with us, use this code IAS English and automatically you will subscribe to this course at 17,999. But if you need my help in deciding which plan is better for you, I would suggest please go for 18 months plan, which previously was available for 52,000 odd and now is available at 20,999. Because with this 18-month subscription, you get Unacademy Assure, which means if you buy 18-month subscription plan with us, and God forbid, if you believe in God, you are unable to crack the exam in your first attempt, your second attempt's entire preparation will be borne by Unacademy. That's something that I had to announce. Let's look at another topic, hold the center. Bangladesh needs a leader who can keep extremists at bay. The year was 1971. Bangladesh emerged as an independent country. Because Bangladesh till then, or East Pakistan as it was called, it was part of Pakistan. So Pakistan, once it was born in 1947, there was West Pakistan and East Pakistan. But the people in East Pakistan would speak Bengali, and they were linguistic minorities in that sense. This was not acceptable to the West Pakistanis, and ultimately these people in East Pakistan were subjugated. Long story short, they revolted, in which India played a very important role. There was a war between India and Pakistan in 1971, which led to the emergence of Bangladesh as an independent country. And this was a time when United States openly sided with Pakistan, sent its fleet to the Indian Ocean, to the Arabian Sea, to help Pakistan. But somehow we defeated the nefarious designs of Pakistan and United States, got some help from Soviet Russia as well. We won that war and Bangladesh emerged as an independent country. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, he became the leader of Bangladesh. And he also charted its own independent foreign policy. Because you would know, after the Second World War, the world became bipolar. On one hand, we had the US power bloc. On the other hand, we had the USSR power bloc. Just like India, where India decided that we will neither align with the US power bloc nor with the USSR power bloc, we will chart out our own independent foreign policy, and that is how NAM was created, non-aligned movement. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman also said we will not align with either the Russians or the Americans. We will chart out our own independent foreign policy. And our foreign policy will be based on friendship with all and malice towards none. But then Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, he was assassinated. His daughter Sheikh Hasina was then in India. A few other members of the family were also assassinated. Then there was some military coup in Bangladesh. Then there was a civilian government. Then we had Begum Khalida Zia's husband, General Ziaur Rahman, who was a military general, later on became a politician, was the president of Bangladesh, but then he was also assassinated, and military established control in Bangladesh. Long story short, after the military took control of Bangladesh, two important women leaders, Sheikh Hasina and Begum Khalida Zia, they got together to oust the military rule and got back to democracy in Bangladesh. This was the first and the only time where these two ladies, Sheikh Hasina and Begum Khalida Zia, collaborated with each other, and Begum Khalida Zia became the prime minister. But then throughout the history of Bangladesh, it was as if controlled by the two Begums, as this newspaper editorial points out. Two Begum Khalida Zia, Sheikh Hasina. Sheikh Hasina is now in exile in India, and Begum Khalida Zia has expired, she is dead. Now this editorial says that when the elections will be conducted in Bangladesh in February, we need a leader in Bangladesh who can keep the extremists at bay. And for that, we need to understand India-Bangladesh relations. The year was 2009. Begum Khalida Zia, she was ousted as the prime minister. She lost the election, and Sheikh Hasina became the prime minister of Bangladesh. Begum Khalida Zia, she was hostile to India. She was closer to Pakistan, closer to China as well. The radical Islamists in Bangladesh, the Jamaat-e-Islami, they were also closer to Begum Khalida Zia, and they had ties with Pakistan. And that is how Bangladeshi soil was used to launch terror attacks on Indian soil. Extremists, militants, terrorists who were wanted in India, they were given shelter in Bangladesh. But this situation changed when Sheikh Hasina became the prime minister. And Sheikh Hasina decided to have good relations with India. And that is how in 2015, India-Bangladesh land boundary agreement was signed. Important deals were signed. Most wanted terrorists were extradited by Bangladesh to India. So long story short, in our neighborhood, if there was a turmoil in Nepal, Maldives, China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, in all these neighboring countries who are hostile to India, there was one shining spot of our foreign policy, and that was Bangladesh. And that was precisely because Sheikh Hasina was the prime minister who was adamant in having good relations with India. In 2011, Sheikh Hasina amended the constitution of Bangladesh, because prior to that there was an option, there was a requirement that whenever election would be conducted in Bangladesh, it will be supervised by a caretaker government. But this requirement that elections in Bangladesh should be supervised by a caretaker government, this was removed from the constitution in 2011 when Sheikh Hasina was the prime minister. And then she won the election again, and then in 2024, she won the elections again. And in that election, the opposition criticized this election, saying these are sham elections. Begum Khalida Zia, she said 20,000 of my supporters have been arrested. So these are not free and fair elections. But nevertheless, Sheikh Hasina got re-elected as the prime minister, and then we saw the turmoil in Bangladesh. She had to flee Bangladesh, take shelter in India, and there was a massive revolt against her in Bangladesh, and then Muhammad Yunus became the interim chief of Bangladeshi government. And since then, you would know the minorities in Bangladesh have come under attack. Because when Sheikh Hasina was the prime minister, she ensured that minorities have dignity and respect. But now that she is gone, anti-India sentiment is at its peak in Bangladesh, and Muhammad Yunus, as the interim head of this government, is flaming these fires against India. He has also made controversial statements from the soil of China. He is calling for cutting the chicken's neck, the Siliguri corridor, so that the Northeast can emerge as a separate independent republic. But be that as it may, this anti-India rhetoric and the attack on the minorities has to come to an end, and for that extremists have to be kept at bay. So a new leader has to emerge in Bangladesh who can follow the secular principles according to this editorial. But we also need to understand that India and Bangladesh, these two countries share historical, cultural, as well as economic ties. Historical ties. India was the reason Bangladesh could emerge as an independent country. So we played a pivotal role in their emergence on the world map. Cultural. If Rabindranath Tagore, Gurudev, is the author of the national anthem of India, Jan Gan Man, he is also the author of the national anthem of Bangladesh, Amar Sonar Bangla. And you would see the cultural ties in the sense that whenever there are IPL auctions, particularly for Kolkata Knight Riders, there is a heavy bidding for the players from Bangladesh because of the cultural ties between West Bengal and the Bangladeshis. Economic ties. If you look at 2020 to 2021 or 2021 to 2022, the trade between India and Bangladesh, it was 15 billion US dollars. But there is China's involvement, China angle, the bilateral trade between China and Bangladesh in the same period was 25 billion. Not just that, if you look at important statistics, China has invested $10 billion in the infrastructure projects in Bangladesh in the form of Belt and Road Initiative. Not just that, China has given $500 million of credit loan to Bangladesh. Why? So that you can import defense equipments. And in fact, Bangladesh is the second largest importer of weapons from China. India, we help Bangladesh by providing them 1,140 megawatts of electricity. But China has given loan of $450 million to Bangladesh so that Bangladesh can focus on its domestic renewable energy power generation. So China is competing with India and in most cases surpassing India in helping Bangladesh. And that is why Bangladesh and China are now even closer to each other, which they were not when Sheikh Hasina was the prime minister. That is why we need a political party in Bangladesh which can also serve India's interests. Because we share roughly 4,100 kilometers of boundary border with Bangladesh. The critics argued that there was a mistake made by the union government, by the central government in India, where we kept all eggs in one basket. And that basket was Sheikh Hasina. We invested so much in Sheikh Hasina that we decided to ignore other political parties. And that is how other political parties, they were shaping anti-India narrative in Bangladesh. So this was the problem, this was the mistake of the foreign policy makers in India to keep all eggs in the one basket. And that is why now we are dealing with the son of Begum Khalida Zia. Mr. S.J. Shankar, the External Affairs Minister, visited Bangladesh, paid tributes to Begum Khalida Zia. So that is one way of now engaging with a political party, which is, according to every estimate, bound to come to power in February. So in February, Begum Khalida Zia's Bangladeshi Nationalist Party may come to power. And for that, we need to now deal with them as well. Because we kept all our eggs in one basket of Sheikh Hasina. Sheikh Hasina is now in exile in India. Her political party is banned from contesting elections. So then how do we negotiate and keep our interests alive in our neighboring country, Bangladesh? For that, we need to engage with them. And Bangladesh also needs a leader who can ensure that every Bangladeshi is given dignity, respect, regardless of your religious affiliation. That's topic number 2. Let's look at topic number 3, ensuring that value of all lives is the same. This article says that every year on New Year's Eve, we have number of road accidents. But road accidents, and then we have insurance. Third-party insurance, comprehensive insurance, whatever insurance you talk about, compensation will have to be provided to those who die in these road accidents. But how is this compensation calculated? There is something called income-based valuation. For example, under the Motor Vehicles Act of 1988, the Motor Vehicles Tribunals, they are given responsibility that you have to award compensation to the victims. And this compensation has to be a just compensation. But how is this compensation just? For that, there is a method that courts have also devised called multiplier method. Multiplier method is the sense, there was a case, Sarla Verma v. DTC, in which the court said multiplier method should be used to provide just compensation to the victims. For example, who is a victim? X. What is the annual income of this individual? And what is the age of this individual? Multiply it and we get the compensation. And this compensation will be just. Which means if you are the CEO of a company and earning in 10 digits and you are of lower age, ultimately what will happen? You will tend to get more compensation. But a housewife or a street vendor will get less amount of compensation despite the fact that accident is the same. So this is where we create a situation which may violate Article 14, equality. And this does not happen in other accidents where, in case of motor vehicles accidents, we compare the worth of an individual to market value, which means the lives of the poor are not that important at all, but the lives of those who are earning well, that is more important because we attach more monetary value to their lives as compared to the poor workers. And this does not happen in other accidents. For example, if there is a railway accident, we don't decide on the basis of your income and your age what is the just compensation that we have to provide you. It's a flat rate awarded by the insurance, awarded by the tribunals. Similarly, for example, 8 lakh for death. It's fixed. Regardless of your income, regardless of your age, you will get this compensation. This is just compensation. Similarly, if there is an air mishap, we don't decide compensation on the basis of whether your income was X or 2X and what is your age. So why do we decide this only when it comes to motor vehicles accidents? This is where it is arbitrary and as such violating Article 14 of the Constitution, because Article 14 includes right against arbitrariness, according to the writer. So what is the solution? The solution that is proposed by the writer is something called dignity floor. So there should be a baseline. Below this baseline, nobody should be awarded compensation. Just like we have minimum wages set, below that you can't pay your worker. Similarly, there should be a dignity floor, because we should not decide the compensation just on the basis of what you're earning and what is your age. It has to be a dignified floor, a certain minimum level. On top of that, you can give add-ons to those who are earning more. You can do that. That is a favorable compensation. But this dignity floor, minimum compensation, should be paid to everybody. On top of that, you can give add-ons to those who are earning more with less age. That's okay. But income-linked additions should be supplementary to this floor, not the base itself. And that is why there is a question on your screen. The determination of compensation in motor accident claims often reduces human life to an arithmetic of loss, creating a conflict between economic restitution and constitutional equality. Critically analyze the statement in light of Motor Vehicles Act framework and suggest reforms. And what is the reform? The reform is this: dignity floor. Minimum value below which nobody should be paid regardless of your income capacity. But yes, if you want to give slightly more compensation to those who have income, X income, 10X income, you can do that. But that should be supplementary. That should not be the base itself. Now let's look at other important topic. No third-party mediation during Operation Sindoor. Pahalgam attack took place where the terrorists from Pakistan killed innocent, unarmed civilians, tourists in Pahalgam, and they were identified on the basis of their religion and then killed. In response to this dastardly attack, the Government of India, the armed forces, launched Operation Sindoor and attacked the terror camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. After a few days of conflict, there was an understanding. We don't call it a ceasefire, we call it an understanding. And the understanding was that the Director General of Military Operations from Pakistan approached us and requested for halting the fire. And we did that. But then there were claims, first by Donald Trump, the President of the United States, that I was the one who mediated this ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Otherwise, there would have been a bloody, ugly war between the two countries in which maybe N would be used, nuclear weapons would be used. But we have rebuffed it. We have rejected this allegation. That's the stated position of the Government of India. We do not believe in mediation. So whatever understanding we had with Pakistan, or the ceasefire as you call it, it was not at the behest of any third country. It was agreed upon, arrived at between the two countries. And now China seems to have made this claim again. China now says that we were responsible, we had mediated to put an end to this conflict between India and Pakistan. Although we have not directly responded to the statement given by the Foreign Minister Wang Yi of China, but we have again reiterated that on Kashmir or any issue that we have between India and Pakistan, there will be no third-party mediation. We are going to resolve our disputes bilaterally. And that is keeping in mind the Shimla Agreement. So from this topic, Shimla Agreement becomes important because that was when the government of the two countries, India and Pakistan, decided that whatever issues that we have with each other, including Kashmir, we are going to resolve them bilaterally. We do not want third-party interference. And Shimla Agreement was signed between the two countries after the 1971 war, in which Bangladesh emerged as an independent country. Let's look at another important topic. 2 booked for raping woman for over 7 years. But from this topic, if you notice, a concept 0 FIR is mentioned. What is an FIR? First Information Report. In Criminal Procedure Code, which was in existence till 2023, in Indian Penal Code, which was in existence till 2023, FIR as a concept was not mentioned. But what is this FIR? If a cognizable offense has been committed, a cognizable offense where the police can arrest you without a warrant, can investigate a case without a warrant, without the approval of the magistrate. So if a cognizable offense has been committed, first information should be mentioned in the police station. That is FIR. But if, for example, a rape or a murder has been committed here, you have to report this incident in the nearest police station, because this police station should have a jurisdiction over this area where the crime is committed. Can you file this information report in another police station? No. So if I was a woman, I was a victim of rape or molestation or stalking, and I am now moving away from this place of incident and moving to another country, another state, or another jurisdiction, I cannot file this case here because the police will say, go and file this case in an area where this offense has been committed. When Justice Verma Committee was set up, December 16, 2012, if I remember the date correctly, Nirbhaya was gang raped in a moving bus, and then she was thrown off the bus. The bus was made to hit her, and then she died, struggling and battling for life at a hospital in Singapore. How do we protect women? For that, Justice Verma Committee was set up, and Justice Verma Committee said there should be a provision for zero FIR. Zero FIR in the sense, no matter where the crime has been committed, you go to any police station and you can register the case. And that is what we call zero FIR. What is zero FIR? For any first information report, there is always a number given. What is the number of this FIR? But in this zero FIR, no number is given. So the police will register this zero FIR, and then police itself will transfer this case to that police jurisdiction, to that police station where the crime is committed. And then this police station will investigate this offense, this crime, and assign a number. This zero FIR was not mentioned in Indian Penal Code, was not mentioned in Criminal Procedure Code. But now it is explicitly mentioned in Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita BNSS, because BNSS has now replaced Criminal Procedure Code. That's something that you have to keep in mind. What is a zero FIR? You can report a cognizable offense in any police station, even if the crime did not happen in the jurisdiction of that police station. That police station will register this FIR without assigning any number, and then transfer this FIR to a police stations where this crime has committed. And then that police station will investigate and assign a number to this case, and then it will become a normal FIR. That is zero FIR, and that is very important for your prelims examination. Now let's look at another important topic. DRDO carries out salvo launch of Pralay missiles. Now what are these Pralay missiles? For that, we need to understand two things: ballistic missile and a cruise missile. Which are the ballistic missiles that we have? Agni, Prithvi. Which are the cruise missiles that we have? BrahMos and Nirbhay. So what is this Pralay? We call it a quasi-ballistic missile. So it is neither a cruise missile nor a ballistic missile. It stays somewhere in between, and that is massive. Why massive? For example, what is a ballistic missile? Ballistic missile, the rocket takes an arch. So initially there is a push, and then after that push, this rocket will travel on its own, will use the power generated by the initial push, and then the force of gravity, and then will hit the destination. But this ballistic missile will use the arching feature, right? And then it will move outside of the atmosphere, and then it will re-enter the atmosphere and hit the target. Which means the path taken by this ballistic missile is predictable, which will be identified by the radar system of that country as well. but they travel at a very high speed, supersonic, Mach 5 to Mach 20, high speed, but they are easier to detect. As compared to ballistic missile, we have a cruise missile. Cruise missile does what? It uses a jet engine type to propel its path, but it does not go outside of the atmosphere. It is often hugging the terrain, flies at low altitude, and as such it becomes difficult for the radar of enemy country to identify it, to track it. But then there is this jet engine which is powering this missile throughout the entire flight. And then it can change its direction as well. It can maneuver as well and then hit the target. It's harder to detect, but it has less speed as compared to ballistic missile. So ballistic missiles, once they are launched, they will travel on their own. They won't change their positions. They won't maneuver. They won't change their direction. But cruise missiles, they are under the radar system. They fly at low altitude and they can maneuver. They can change the direction as well. So if there is an obstacle, I can change the direction. Cruise missile. Can we have a ballistic missile with cruise missile capability so that we can launch it and then it will use the gravity as well to propel it further? It will travel at a high speed, but it can also make maneuvers, change directions, just like cruise missile does. And that is what is Pralay. DRDO has carried out the launch, the salvo launch of these Pralay missiles, and these are what we call quasi-ballistic missiles. That's something that you have to keep in mind, and that is it from our side for today's The Daily Hindu Newspaper Analysis. If you have enjoyed this lecture, do let me know in the comment section. Happy New Year once again. I'll see you again. Till then, all the best.